Okay, looks like most of you have already joined us. So I'll be starting with an introduction so that meanwhile other people could also join in. So very good evening, everyone. My name is Mahima Lal and I am the part of engagement marketing team at Vired, and I'm hosting this webinar for you all today. So before we move into the webinar and the topic, a quick introduction to this platform, which is Vired, everyone. So Vired is a premium LearnTech company, which is the part of the larger Hero Group, which is on a mission to not only reimagine the way people learn, but also to build a better and a brighter future for themselves. So we at Vired ensure that we equip our learners with the right skill set, the right knowledge, and the expertise that they need in order to find success. So as you all can see that today we are presenting a webinar on the topic driving success through data, business perspectives and real world usage. And in order to present this topic, we have Mr. Rajesh Gopal with us. A very warm welcome, Mr. Rajesh. So a quick introduction to Rajesh. So he is a seasoned professional with over 20 plus years of experience across industries and multiple IT domains, business process domains, and leveraging digital and technology to deliver value at scale. He has previously worked with companies like Unilever, L'Oreal, ITC, and he's currently working for Kimberly Clark as a Chief Information Officer. So today, Rajesh will be taking you through this topic. A very warm welcome, Rajesh, once again. With Rajesh, we have Soumya Saxena today here with us. So Soumya is the subject matter expert at Vired, and she is catering the data science related programs that are offered by Vired. Thank you so much, Soumya, for joining us today. So everyone, a quick hygiene check for this webinar. So as you all know, you won't be able to switch on your mics and your cameras. So if you wish to interact with Rajesh and if you have any certain questions regarding the topic that we're presenting today, you have a Q&A section and a chat box that you all can see on your screens. So if in case you have any questions, you can put down a question in the Q&A section. And if you would want to respond to the questions that Rajesh is asking, and if you want to interact with him, you have a chat box on your screen, which you can use to interact. Looks like we have a lot of people here with us, Rajesh, and we can begin with the webinar now.
Great. Thank you so much, Mahima. Let me share the screen first.
Sure.
Can I just check, Mahima? Or actually, let me check with the people. Can I just check with the attendees if you can see the screen?
Yes, Rajesh, we can see the screen.
Okay, fantastic. So thanks again, Mahima, for the introduction, and thank you all for joining in. Right. I'm going to spend about maybe 40-45 minutes, plus minus 10 minutes, depending on the kind of interaction that I have on this topic of, I'm going to lower the video, which is, on the topic of data and analytics, giving a business perspective in a real world usage. Where it says business perspective, it's going to be largely from a CPG or an FMCG perspective, because that's where I have worked most of my career, right? Okay. Before I go on to the first slide, maybe some expectations on the presentation itself and what you can expect out of it, right? So I'm not going to give you a course on machine learning algorithms. So you're not going to become a better or become one data scientist after this presentation. You're not going to become a data engineer after this, right? You're not going to become a functional expert, in any of these domains, right? Then you might wonder, what is it that I would cover? I'm going to give you a view in terms of how data and analytics is being applied in business, specifically from an FMCG, CPG perspective, what we're calling as a real world usage. We'll start with some bit of challenges in this space, then what are those building blocks, and eventually, how business can get value, right? In some of the places, I'm gonna pause and maybe ask you for some comments. I'll read through the comments. Hopefully, there are some questions as well there. I would request and urge you to do that, because otherwise it's very difficult to just look at on screen a set of slides which I have prepared and keep talking continuously. So if you're okay with that bit of a house rule, I'll proceed. Once in a way, I'm going to check on the time as well. Okay, let me start with this one. It's not that data or analytics has not been there for a while, right? But of late, in the last couple of years or so, there's even more fuss than what it was in the past, right? Any views on what has changed? Why is everyone talking so much? Why are organizations talking so much about data and analytics? Some years ago it was big data and a whole lot of things, right? So what do you think has changed? Some comments? Digital transformation, it's a word that we keep hearing a lot. I'll talk about that. Thanks, Prem. It's always good to find someone who starts with the first comment. Anyone else? There's no right or wrong answer. Oh? Companies are more dependent on data. I'm going to talk about that, Ramnik, a lot more. Business perspective on resolving the issue has been changes as per my knowledge. Yes, data is growing exponentially. Prami, thank you for that. I'm going to cover some of these points. And a reason for my AI has begun this race. The reason for my asking is also to find out where all of your mind is at. Right, Shika, easy availability of analytics software. Yes, it's a good and a bad, not so good thing. So let me get onto it. So thanks guys for at least kickstarting with some good participation. Right, I'll give a high level overview and then move on to some specifics. And my slide is not moving. Yeah, right there. Okay, see, I'll give a high level overview here. So what's changed, right? If you look at it in the past, many years ago, I think 1700s or maybe 18, there was the industrial age, right? Which was about a concept of saying you can actually do mass production, right? It started with the textile industry, then grew on to other places, right? But it was basically about saying there is a way to do mass production. Up until then, it was unheard of, right? That machines can actually do multiple products day in and day out. And then somewhere in the towards end of 1900s 90s and then early 2000s, the information age came in, right? Which with internet and all of that, it created a lot of buzz, especially for India. A lot of dot-coms came up, right? Bringing in the concept of internet, bringing in concept of online, some online industries came up, right? Which was another revolution. If you look at where we are right now, I'm calling it, or some would call it, a connected age. What does that really mean? It just means that every object or most objects, right, under the sun, there's actually a way by which it is getting connected into the ecosystem, right? I mean, very simple terms, the connected can be to say, it's all on the same Wi-Fi. That's one simple way of putting it across. So be it the fan these days or a TV remote these days, you speak to a TV remote, it understands it. There's an Alexa device. There's a whole lot of things, right, which earlier were disconnected set of things. Now they are all connected, and connected means they are also continuously picking up data, picking up observations, which we can actually use on an ongoing basis. Right? What has made it possible? Some bit of exponential technology breakthroughs. I'm not going to go through all of it, right? But just to give you an example, I'm sure all of you have heard so much about cloud. We'll later talk about it. Cloud basically is about saying, hey, there is this place instead of your data center where it's what we call as on the cloud, right? Where continuous innovation can happen. It's scalable, it's agile as per the needs, right? Then there is AI. This chart is actually an old one. I should have ideally put it as Gen AI. And everyone is talking about that. Everyone is talking about what you can do different with Gen AI. Then there are of course, the other things, IoT, I'm very sure you've heard of as well, which is actually enabling this phygital kind of a concept, right? So these are technology breakthroughs, if I can call, in the last many years, which have actually made this, excitement around data and analytics. Having said that, right, while there is excitement, there are these technologies. If you look at it purely from a organization, a CPG perspective, I don't believe it's fully leveraged. It's not leveraged like the way it could be with, say, what has done with Google Maps, right? Google has done with its maps. Or the other example I like to give is driverless cars, which Telsa brought in. Some people would have seen it. Some of you might have seen it on videos, right? If you're lucky enough, you would have sat in one of it. Uh, but there are barriers to it. For all practical reasons, somewhere data and analytics has not hit the sweet spot, has not gotten those huge values. I'm talking about the way at which we have seen in the example that I just gave in some of these traditional industries, right? Although things are getting better. I'm going to talk about the barriers, but before I do so, I'll ask a simple because they've done so many thousands of miles in the US and places like that. I'm getting a message that my internet connection is unstable. If you're not able to hear me, just message, please. So going back to the driverless cars, you've heard a lot about it. Think about why it might not work in India. What do you think it would not work? Some messages on chat, please. I hope you could hear me. Mahima, I'm going to ask if you could hear me just because
Yes, Rajesh, I can clearly hear you.
Okay. I got a message that my internet connection was not stable. So some views, comments, please, on what you think, why you think it would not work in India, the driverless cars, right now at least. Okay, I see silence, which means people don't agree with me. Okay, there's traffic from all around because of road conditions, congested lanes, poor traffic. Okay. The reason for my asking, and I'm going to go back to some of these points and bring in an analogy with what I was talking about on barriers in to data and analytics in the organizations, right? Okay. In case you're wondering, this is a picture of a small girl looking at an Apple Watch, and I'll tell you why I put this across. I think a year or so ago, I have an 8-year-old daughter. She's 9 now. She was 8 then. She managed to get hold of my wife's Apple Watch, okay, because my wife was not using it. She got a new one, and my daughter used it, and she started tracking the steps, and she got so excited about it, right? And then she would come to me and then say, "Hey, Appa, I have done 200 steps." Then she would walk around rigorously in the living room and then say, "Now it is 120 steps or 220 steps," and then more, and then more. Every time she would jump around and say, "I have done this," right? And this real-time data and analytics that she is getting, right? What does she do with it? She gets excited. She comes and tells me. Why am I sharing this as a first one, right? In a lot of organizations, right, the real-time data or analytics that we have will unfortunately cease to become a toy, like how an 80-year-old would see it, if no specific action is coming out of it, right? In this specific case, although it's not expected out of my daughter, right, is actually to be able to say, hey, okay, hey, this is the number of steps, and hence I need to do this exercise. I need to increase the cardio, decrease the cardio, whatever it is, right? There are specific actions. Very similar in organizations, right? It's absolutely important to start with a business problem or a business opportunity, right? And the preciseness of it is absolutely important. I cannot emphasize enough on how some organizations still miss the plot on it, right? It's about saying, Data analytics will be useful only if you define the problem to say, how do I grow my sales in this specific region for this product portfolio, from this percentage to this percentage? Can I get an answer, right? You want to be as precise as possible. Otherwise, it's like a toy that a 8-year-old has, right? The Apple Watch toy. Let me go to the other one. I like this one as well. Nothing new here. Some of you might have seen this, right? It says torture data long enough, it will confess to anything. The reason for my putting this across is because there is still a lot of judgment in play in terms of what analytics provides you, especially these days. More and more you get into ML, which becomes more of a black box, right? But if someone is coming in with a preconceived view, it's very difficult to make value of it, right? So to give you an example, right, all of you would have seen different WhatsApp forwards of people based on your political affinities. You change the numbers, right? You change the way by which you look the numbers. You don't change the numbers, but you change the way by which you look at it, and it tells you the same story, right? To give another example, I remember I used to live in Mumbai for a while. I was planning a visit to from Mumbai to Alibag, and almost everyone I spoke to said the roads are horrible. That's something which I heard from everyone, right? And I'm generally data driven on about everything, even in my personal life. I realized when I was doing the drive, it's 100-kilometer distance, except for about 10 kilometers which had poor roads. Everything was perfect. It was a great drive otherwise, right? And I could easily hit 85 plus, 90 plus, but for some reason that 10 kilometers seemed to have, which was horrible roads, seemed to have given that kind of a view, right? So the judgment part of it becomes a vital factor with how we use or how we want to get value out of data. This one, I think some of you in the comments earlier, let me go back to driverless cars, right? There was, when I asked the question, they said roads are not good. And 2, 3 points, infrastructure, the road capability, there are a lot of potholes and things like that, right? For me, the same analogy holds true here. While there are a lot of talk about cloud technology, and we are leveraging on it in many organizations, the problem is, if you see this picture, there is still some bit of legacy or old components still sitting in there, right? They are there because it has not gotten modernized. Maybe organizations don't have the funding, right? Whatever be the reason, the message that I'm trying to give here is, unless you try and modernize it completely from an infrastructure perspective, which is scalable, which is agile, right? And has all these new principles of microservices, platform architecture, blah, blah, all of it, you cannot leverage on that. It doesn't matter what you try and do, right? To give an example, I've still heard of some places where some of the processes could still be running on as old as in Windows XP or a 2003, right? So that's a challenge. It's a real challenge on the ground. This one, is perhaps just as important as the others on data quality. I'll give you a couple of examples here. I have seen in some organizations where the same material, to give an example, it could be sugar, which is a vital raw material in a lot of food industries, is called by 10 different codes, right? And they had reason for it, why it is called that. And 10 different codes or vendor partners, same vendor partners called in 10 different codes across, right? So data quality, I'm just giving you a couple of examples, right? Unless that is taken care of, it's just going to be gibberish and garbage out, right? The other point, you might have heard of this in many places, people have heard of it, but not really understood it or put it into practice, what we call as data governance. I will touch upon it later as well. One of the challenges, big challenges in big organizations is you do not have a proper data owner, right? And the owner is important because he or she ensures data quality, not just at the beginning of an initiative, but on an ongoing basis as well. And then owns up enrichment of the data as well on an ongoing basis. this becomes a challenge in many of the places. So, I mean, I wanted to start with these barriers, not to give a negative spin to it, but to tell you that in a lot of places, the success and value of how well data and analytics is used or leveraged in an organization, it depends on how well you tackle all these barriers. And the first one that I started off is the key, most important one. To refresh your memory, I started off by saying, start with a business problem, start with a business opportunity. You'll be surprised again, right? How many times people miss that, what seems like a seemingly simple concept. So let me start with some North Stars, right? Some of it could go outside of CPG itself, right? For me, Netflix is, and by the way, I'm not getting any royalty from any of these organizations, except for the fact that, yes, I have a bit of bias with L'Oreal and HUL having worked there previously, right? But for me, Netflix is just amazing, the kind of personalization they go through, right? Basically picking up what kind of series or movies you've watched in the past, right? And hence be able to nudge and tell you these are the things or recommendations that you would like. And they do it with a fantastic UI as well, which makes it even better. L'Oreal does some amazing work with respect to the engagement with the consumers, or in places like precision marketing. I'll give an example at a later point in time, or to give you one right away. Not sure if you guys have heard of what is called as ModiFace. It's a skin diagnostic tool. If you've not heard of it, I would recommend that you check out the L'Oreal website and try it out. Right, it basically scans your face and be able to tell you how healthy your skin is, what is your skin age, and so on and so forth. It's a really cool tool, and there are also some virtual try-ons on eyeliners and makeups and things like that. So L'Oreal, I think, leverages well enough on data analytics. Hindustan Unilever is another organization which is a big CPG in India, which does a lot of work here. I will talk about some cases which could be relevant to what HUL is already doing. The other favorite example that I have, I am an avid cricket fan, right? The way analytics is permeated into the game is just fantastic, right? There is one thing about the descriptive part of analytics, like you see here on Beehive, pitch map, and so on and so forth. There is also the advanced part of it, ML, that gives insights, like saying, if Virat Kohli scores more than 40 in the second innings, against this team, 99% of the times, India wins, right? Those kind of statistics that come in. It's just fantastic that they have done it. They've also taken a lot of unstructured data and been able to get converted into structured data. What I mean by unstructured data is, for instance, the number of catches a person drops, right? It's an unstructured data. Somewhere someone picks it up, digitizes it, and you're able to get insights out of it. For me, that's another great example. So now let me move into organization and get more into what it means for a CPG, right? So how does organization consume data today, right? If you look at it, there's the age-old way of doing it, which is still rampant, by the way, is spreadsheets and Excel. It's very difficult to beat it, right? There are super users that use it, do some computations and things like that, especially the finance folks, and it works well, right? Then those that are a little more savvy with respect to databases are able to run some queries or have someone run queries on their behalf and able to get some insights out of it. Right? A big area, which especially in the last few years, where organizations have leveraged is on visualization, right? I think that's really fantastic, right? The way people have used Tableau or a Power BI, Quicker, and a lot of these Looker, sorry, in terms of the way you look at these this data, different types of chart, and be able to get insights out of it. The last of it, again, Python is just given as an example. It's just there are many such tools out there. The emphasis on, once you have collected huge amount of data, which organizations have, right? How they are able to leverage on it, and how they're able to get a lot of insights on it. Of course, while it says basic to advanced, I see that there is a play for all of these, especially visualization and the advanced algorithms in any of the organizations, right? I'm just going to pause here. I've been talking continuously for a bit, just to see if there is any other comments on this chart or any other questions up until now. Maybe I'll prompt you to say, with respect to what I've just shared on how organizations consume data, do you have a view in terms of where could be a bigger bias towards, where do you think organizations, or within organization, any specific function, where do you think the bias is on how they consume data? Just any comment or feedback would be appreciated so that I know that there are people at the other end as well. Okay, it's either a silent audience or you guys are. So can you repeat your question? Yes, I can. So now I was asking, I basically wanted to get some comments based on what I'm sharing so far. And importantly, my question was to say, in this specific chart, do you have a view in terms of where largely the bias is for organization on how they are consuming data? What do you mean, bars? I don't understand the question. I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. I'm gonna move on from for now. If you wanna clarify on that question later, let me know. Okay, this is a busy chart. Okay, hi Rajesh. We use it before I get here. We use a lot of projects related to data for costing. Data for costing. The same data is being put by different departments differently. Thanks for making that. Thanks for making that point. I'm going to bring that up now as well. Right. This is a representation of CPG or FMCG data sets, right? Don't intend to go through all of it, but 2-3 messages here, right? Just look at the varied set of data which is coming in, which is across the value chain, right? There is, of course, if you look at the right part of it, there is the consumer engagement part of it. So if you have a D2C platform or a website, there are a lot of things that you hear, you pick up about the consumer, you capture about the consumer. I have a chart later which talks about this in a little more detail. And then if you go towards the leftmost of the chart, there are things that you pick up from a manufacturing perspective, right? There is also R&D, right? So there's a whole lot of things in terms of data, right? That an organization or a CPG organization is actually grappling with. And the challenge becomes multifold because it's not easy to start leveraging on data and analytics in a mixed bag like this, right? Where there are different data sets across different teams. What do you think would be complexities here for an organization? I gave an example of HUL, right, or an ITC or a L'Oreal. What could be challenges that or complexities apart from what I spoke about earlier? I'm not talking about those barriers, but purely managing this data set. What do you think could be some of the challenges here? Yeah, bias through sampling, I agree. But specifically with respect to data set, data quality. There's a very simple point. If you look at organizations with all these data sets, do you think there is just one team which is churning out this data and managing this data? It's multiple teams, right? There's the supply chain, there's the finance, there's the sales guy, and within sales there could be different regions, right? And each of them would have different maturity, right? Availability of past data. So here again, right? Sales might have a whole lot of history, right? Maybe supply chain does not have, or vice versa, right? The multiple source of data that Shika, you're mentioning about. So if you look at it in totality, it gets absolutely siloed, all the data sets. Yes, you can do a use case specific to a domain, right? But typically, most use cases work across. That's the biggest challenge, Hirendra. Thanks for raising it, right? No coordination between teams. You'll be amazed, right, in terms of how difficult it is to get different teams together to define a common problem and towards working towards a solution. It's not because they don't want to work with each other, it's just because there's the complexity of priorities and a whole lot of other things, right? Maturity of the capability, maturity of appreciation of data, right? And so on and so forth. Now let me get on to what could be pillars for landing a data use case, after which I will get into some examples of real use cases in in these businesses, right? If I get your attention to the left side where I call business, right? If you recall, I've been emphasizing this, and it doesn't matter how much I emphasize, it's not enough. You start with business. You start with a problem definition or an opportunity based definition or what you want to solve using the data. I'll give you one specific example. I heard this from a friend of mine who worked at Google. I understand in Google, there was once a view that the canteen food is not interesting, and they want to change the menu, right? And this is a real life thing I heard from a colleague, a friend, and a friend of mine who was working with Google. I believe to even change the canteen menu to come up with saying maybe you should go to a masala dosa or a idli or a paratha, whatever it is, they went through a data-driven decision, putting across a point that there is a view that the canteen food is not interesting, right? Why is that view coming in from? What are the options out there? And hence, how do we come up with different things, right? I'm not saying that's the only thing Google does. It just fascinated me that that's the kind of data-driven view that something like Google takes, right? So start with business, and hence important to make sure there's a business owner or a product owner, as we call these days, right? Then there is the data part of it. A number of you could be involved in this area, right? People that have the expertise on data. And when I say expertise, I'm talking about expertise in managing or handling the data. There's the data engineers. I'm sure you know what it means. I'm not going to talk about that. Then the data scientists who bring in their expertise on different modeling algorithms and so on and so forth, right? Then there is the technology platform which I spoke about, which comes in through what's popularly called as an IT guy. The person brings in that infrastructure or platform, ensures that the data is secure, especially with respect to consumer data. It's very important to be comply with the law of the land, especially with a lot of data privacy laws coming in, not just in our country, but whole of APAC. This is a big area itself, right? And then the last point on change and agile. If you recall, I started off with saying why it's important to make sure you don't continue to say it's judgment or that's the way things have always been. Why should I change, right? Hence, that requires a lot of change management or rigor to say we have done something in a certain way and we might want to do it a different way simply because data suggests that, right? Which and that's not easy. That kind of changing behavior is not easy, especially for organizations which have been doing a process the same way for years together, right? Hence, the point I want to make is it's important for landing a use case. Representation across all of these is important. In number of cases, right? Either one of it could be missing or is broken or emphasized less. And that could be a recipe for not getting that success, right? I'll give a couple of examples now on areas, right, where I have seen some good examples of data and analytics, right? Operations, you might want to look at it in terms of synonymous to supply chain as well. To give you a couple of examples, I spoke earlier about how with phygital or IoT, the inanimate objects are also connected and they are constantly churning out data, right? What happens in a shop floor is a very good example of machines continuously churning out data in real time, right? A couple of things that I have worked on, right, is one problem that came up to say, uh, the cookies that we make, right, they're supposed to be of a certain color, light brownish, to give you an example, right? And if it's not the case, it gets caught at quality where they get rejected because something could be darker, something could be way lighter than what it should be. In some cases, it's crumbled, it's slightly broken, and it gets thrown out as well, right? And it is costing the organization money because it's picked up at a later stage after it actually gets discarded, right? This was a brilliant case for for a data scientist helping us out in terms of running the model and then saying right at the beginning of the manufacturing process, right, where the ingredients are brought in, so say yeast, or in some cases there is the flour coming in some cases it's about the temperature at which it's getting baked in the oven, right, or the amount of sugar that is getting added. At each of these processes, as it gets that data, it's a as it gets its data, it's able to come up with a view to say, hey, there could be a challenge with respect to what we have historically seen. This is likely to impact the outcome, right? And then there is another stage where, and this again happens through ML, it is able to scan the layer of the cookie to say what should be the right color, the shades of brown in this case, and where is it there is a deviation, and then goes ahead and rejects it. Something as simple as this, right, has resulted in a huge value in terms of rupee savings, the dollar savings for the organization. Another example in supply chain is if you typically look at for a lot of these organizations, they have thousands of retail outlets, right? And then distributors who actually supply to these retail outlets, and then warehouses that gets fed by the manufacturing units of factories, right? How do you decide based on the demand coming in, which could be in any of these distributors, right, which factory to source from, right, or which warehouse to source from, which factory to actually plan the productions on? This is the classical problem solved by data and analytics. It could be a simple optimization, and these days we have moved into some ML models as well. So this is in the operations space. I'm just looking at my notes if I'm missing something. Let me move on to digital. And when we say digital, it's basically the engagement with the consumers, right? I don't know if you guys have heard of precision marketing or precision advertising. Let me try and explain this, right? In the past, especially when there was no online channels available, we had TV or media as the only means, right? There was not much precision which is possible. We used to call it as spray and pray, right? You land the advertisement, you hope that it reaches the right set of people, and knowing fully well that the cohort that you're looking at could only be a fraction of what what the audience sees on TV. But people get smart about saying, hey, which channel can I put this on? If I'm targeting a certain age group, maybe one that watches a lot of series, right, could be a Sony Max as an example. Or if I want to target someone as a aftershave as an example, or a deo or a perfume, it could be sports channels traditionally, right? So those kind of things get applied. But these days, with the kind of details that you have, it's possible to market precisely to the cohort that you were trying to reach, right? Here is where, to give an example, I don't know about you guys, I get messages regularly on SMSs from Dr. Batras for baldness, right? Every time I see it, it amuses me. Touchwood, luckily for me, I have not reached baldness yet, and hopefully I don't for many years to come. But somewhere they keep sending this SMS. You know, I get this every week, right? And it always amuses me because all these organizations will actually have data in terms of saying what's the person's age group, right? What are the behavioral habits? For all you know, there should be data available that the person uses a lot of shampoo, right? Someone that is using a lot of shampoo should already, or should obviously not be worried about, what can be done on hair replacement, as an example, right? So uh, organizations, have gotten better at precision marketing. And I'm again giving an example of L'Oreal, right? The skin diagnostics that I spoke about earlier, or virtual try-on I spoke about earlier, it does two things, right? One, as people are using it, for them to use it, they key in their consumer data. They key in data like saying, what's my age, what's the gender, where do I live, some interests, blah, blah, all of it, right? This data is then used in terms of targeting that person the next time. If, let's say, L'Oreal Paris, as an example, wants to target, or Maybelline is a better example. Maybelline is typically targeting young women who have just started working. They love music, they love traveling, right? And they know exactly whom to target, what kind of content to make. The other place where this is also used is the skin diagnostics I gave as an example is churning out, capturing so much of data, which the research and development or research and innovation department can use to understand the details about human skin, especially from a context of different demographics, right? Even if you look at India as a country, they're very different with based on which part of the world, which part of the country you come from, and hence the products that a company like L'Oreal, a cosmetic company like L'Oreal would be making, would have to cater to different skin types, different skin tonalities, right? And this skin diagnostics, as an example, is helping there as well. This looks like a fairly busy this chart, but I will try and simplify this for you, right? Basically, to tell you, give you a view that today, if you look at consumers, right, which could be you and me, engaging in different platforms. The platforms could be a Facebook, an Instagram, and so on and so forth, or a WhatsApp, or it could be organization-owned platforms like a website or a D2C platform, right? We have the opportunity to capture what we call as behavioral information, right? In terms of what is it that the person typically likes to browse about, right? Or if you, what kind of interest the person has, right? It could be transactional information, right? And in terms of saying what has been the history of the person's buying behavior in the last month, last 2 months, last 3 months, whatever it is, right? Or it could be more instant in terms of saying, hey, the person is hovering around this specific button which talks about a campaign, but he or she has not decided yet. Or the person has actually gone ahead, added something on the cart, but it's actually not checked out, right? So there's a whole lot of information that you can actually pick up about consumers and then be able to make decisions on the fly. The reason why in this chart, if you're looking at it, there's got baby info and things like that is because Kimberly Clark, where I work at, right, currently, the products that we focus on, there's the baby care, which is Huggies. Then there's the feminine care, which is your sanitary pads. Then there's the family care, which is tissue papers and things like that, right? And that is where some of these things which are picked up, right? Be it with respect to baby info or what calls as life stage, expectant mom, I'll come to the next chart as well on that, become absolutely key. So what we do is we have these different platforms to capture this information. We of course capture it in a consented way, right? Going in line with the data privacy laws of the country. And then be able to chalk out the life cycle of our consumer, right? And I love this chart. I'll take you through why I have got this chart here, right? So typically, if you look at it, right, I mentioned about feminine care, right, where it's about sanitary pads. It is about knowing at what point, right, the women or the teenage girl in this case is hitting the puberty. At what point, hence, right, you would want to engage with that person or typically that person's mom, right, and be able to track down that life cycle, assuming that there is the loyalty with that consumer for that brand, right? And then at some point in time, that same person can actually be a user of another brand, which is Huggies, right? Which is a diaper based on how that life cycle of the person goes, right? Basically, what we are trying to say, what I'm trying to say here is with data, with your ability to constantly engage with the consumer, there is an ability to cross sell from what you initially started to what you can go on to, right? Or in some cases, we call what we call as upsell, right? Which means I'm going back to an example of, say, L'Oreal again, where Maybelline, I spoke about Maybelline is a cosmetic, range which offers. It's typically for someone who is just started working, a young woman who started working. But as she progresses, in her career, there's the expectation that it's possible to nudge her and move her into a slightly higher brand, which is L'Oreal Paris, right? And that happens. How are we making that decision? That happens because there's a whole lot of data which we are capturing, making decisions, and then we know how to go back to this person with the right kind of nudges, right? So there's always this life cycle that we plot. I have just two more slides and I'm gonna end. For me, this is perhaps the most important slide that I want you to all have in your mind. Eventually, the magic formula, guys, is just three things, right? There is the algorithm. You call it supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning, random forest, whole lot of things, right? And some of you might already know this, right? I only know it at a superficial level, right? There's the algorithm. Then there is the data itself. We spoke about different types of data in an FMCG. I spoke about technology at length, cloud, blah, blah, all of that. Then there's the people and the business process, which is where the change management part comes in, which is where the point on what problem do I want to solve? What is the opportunity? Go back to that chart with that young girl with the Apple Watch, right? That comes in. The magic formula is about how all these three come together to give that value to business, right? It's absolutely important. And because in many places, it's easier to churn out an algorithm because there are experts. I'm not saying I'm not undermining the work that needs to be done. So don't take me wrong. I'm only saying that once you become an expert on what needs to be done, once the application is available, the coding platform is available, R, Python, or whatever, you know what to do in terms of writing that, right? Then the data is available, right? But what gets sometimes missed out is the business context to it, right? In terms of understanding why is the data like the way it is. For instance, because of COVID, for instance, in the recent years, there could be a different pattern than what normally is. And one would know it only if one understands business or the business person is also involved in the solutioning of this, right? So one of the points I would strongly urge all of you, right, who are possibly aspiring in this area of data analytics is it doesn't matter where you sit in these three dabbas, right? It's absolutely important for you to ensure you have a strong view and an understanding and the ability to influence the other areas as well. That's the only way to ensure success in your in whatever use case that you pick up. I cannot emphasize that enough, right? if you are trying to land successful data analytics use cases in a CPG or an FMCG context. So this is the last, I think, of the slides. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. I just want to give you a point, a message to say that in each of the areas, right, whether it's sales, marketing, or whether it's supply chain, there are different use cases that are possible, right? You want to start by saying which use case, what am I trying to solve for? I'll maybe give an example of HUL. There's something on store analytics, which HUL has been doing for a long time, which is to say, how do I equip the salesman when he goes to the outlet to sell a product to that outlet with the data that actually compares this outlet, whatever it's selling, with other outlets in that region, similar region, be it on demographics, be it with respect to the environment around, number of schools in there or number of apartments in there, right? Or anything else, to be able to say, hey, outlets similar to yours are also selling, these products, maybe a Lux or a Hammam, right, or a Pepsodent. You're not selling it for whatever be the reason. You should actually do that because there would be a demand for it, and data tells that, right? So that's the kind of example on store analytics, as which HUL has been successfully using. It was in the papers as well many times on how they are doing this or reimagining things, right? So there are different areas, and it's important to pick up that area, find out what problem you're trying to solve, get back to this, get the teams in order to make sure that you land something which is of value to business. So that was the last of my slides. I'm gonna, okay, CPG is consumer product goods. Sorry, Ramakrishna, I just see this. It's FMCG basically, it's fast moving consumer goods. Okay, so that's the last of the slides that I had. I'm gonna pause here now and gonna ask you for any questions or comments which I can hopefully answer. Or Mahima, let me know if there's anything different that you want me to do.
Sure. Guys, if you have any question regarding the topic that we've just covered, we have Rajesh right here with us. You can put down your questions in the Q&A section, and he's right here to answer you all. It's a great opportunity to directly know from an industry expert how things operate. You can quickly put down your queries and questions in the Q&A section. You have, Rajesh, already answered quite a few questions during the presentation itself, but we'll wait for another 2 minutes if anybody have any other questions.
Sure.
Guys, we will be waiting for another 2 minutes. If in case you have any questions, please put them down in the Q&A section.
Maima, there's a question in the chat box from me.
Okay, I'm not able to. Okay, let me open it. Thank you so much. The insight was the best way to learn all what you explained, as it's very practical. Okay, what's the best way to learn? Okay, there's no secret sauce, but I'm glad you asked that, right? One of the things I would advise, right, is find a way to leverage on sessions like these, right? Because you get to meet up with people, and I'm not saying it should only be from someone like me, right? But find a way to leverage on these sessions, find out where the person is coming from, right? Because it can greatly accelerate your learning, and you don't have to wait and learn it the hard way. There are, of course, webinars with specific courses. I know Soumya is going to talk about it later, so I'm not going to take the thunder away, right? Those are other areas as well. And use the connects, right? I'm just one data point here, right? And with whomsoever you establish the data point, feel free to reach out to the people later. I'm happy to help, by the way, right? The worst that a person can do is ignore or not answer, right? But don't shy away from asking and learning. That can be my only advice to you, Promi. Thanks for asking. What is the role of IT in consumer analytics? In many cases, marketing agencies keep the data to themselves. Absolutely. Well, so it's a challenge, right? Because a lot of organizations are outsourcing, right? And because it is being outsourced, right, you don't get the data at all, right? Hence, organizations have started rethinking the strategy to see, at least with respect to the platforms, right? And I say platforms, I'm talking about the systems. Can I insource it to say, marketing agencies, whatever you're doing, right, work on our systems so that the data remains with us, right? Then we can use it to actually, make insights about it later, right? Specifically, role of IT is, IT has a role in terms of influencing the organizations, the value of insourcing these systems rather than just leaving it to some marketing agency, right? And then go back to the chart I was sharing earlier, right? There is data technology, there is the algorithms, and there is business and people, right? Everyone has to play a role in having overseeing all of it and influencing so that they all come together. In many organizations, or in organizations that at least I have been a part of, IT does that, right? You can call it IT, you can call it digital teams, you can call it analytics teams. It doesn't matter what you call as a name. It's important for a team to do that.
Rajesh, you can quickly take a look in the Q&A section as well. We have a few questions there. If you would want to answer any of them.
Sure. We spoke about multiple sources of data. I'm just grappling with the chat one and then the Q&A, right?
Yeah.
And imagine this happening in thousands and thousands of sources, right? Okay. Hi Rajesh, 42, working with MSc as Assistant General Manager Planning. Do you feel there's a possibility I can just, sorry to ask you. No, it's not a generic question, right? There is a possibility to switch a career in, okay. Others can also read the question, or do you want me to read it out loud?
You can just read out loud so that if in case anybody else have any relatable questions or queries, they can get an answer to that.
So there's a question from the gentleman to say, is there a possibility that can I switch a career in data analytics, having worked in a specific area? In this case, is planning, and specifically wants to call out a point that this gentleman has been working in this for a while now, right? With a couple of decades of experience. Absolutely, Ajit, right? In fact, last week I was having this conversation in one of the leadership conversations where we said, hey, data and analytics is not going to be force-fitted into something and then say, okay, here is what we need to do on data analytics. Let's get the value, right? It starts with business strategy. One of the enablers to it is data and analytics, right? And it helps you step up with a lot of decision making, right? Why am I saying this, right? Is to say that for anything on data analytics, it's absolutely key that you have a strong, deep business understanding. And planning actually, and I know you said planning, whether it's supply chain planning or planning in any of the other areas, is a fantastic domain or an area to actually leverage on data analytics. I mean, the name itself is planning, right? It's you're trying to do something for future, for which you do not know how things will pan out. And one way to do it is actually look at past information and use that through machines, which can actually come up with good predictable models. So yes, Sajid. So simple answer to your question is that. Any idea on what's the demand and supply of data analyst position in the industry? I'm going to read the question again. Any idea on what's the demand and supply of that? Okay, and I think I got it. If I've understood it incorrectly, please ask again. There are a lot of Ramakrishnan. There are a lot of data analysts, right? But getting data analysts that bring in business appreciation and tool or technology appreciation. And when I say tool or technology, I'm loosely using it, right? It's about saying, hey, how does this ML work, right? How does this model work? What are the different tools? It could be a visualization tool as an example. So someone that actually appreciates all of this, not many, right? So you can have a primary skill in one area. You could be a data scientist, right? But it's important, or you're an analyst in a specific area, but it's important for you to be able to get a good understanding, appreciation in the other areas, which I think is missing. Hey, Mahima, I'm happy to answer the questions, but if you're going through a time challenge, just stop me, okay?
Sure, definitely. I think we can take one last question and then we can move on with Soumya.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the two questions. Some examples of business problems in banking and finance, right? I'm going to take that question. In fact, a lot of times, right, when we talk about digital transformation, we give fintech as the example. These guys have been fantastic with respect to what they have done. Deutsche Bank is often given as a good example, how they have turned around things, right? Finance, what example can I think of, right? For instance, the decision to say, can I give a loan to this person? What is the amount of loan I can give to that person, right? A lot of banking or finance sectors have actually started using data for this, because every loan commitment is a risk. And what banks want to do is ensure that the risk is minimized, but at the same time, you do that because that's bread and butter. That's the way you do your business, right? This is a fantastic area where they've leveraged on a lot of data here. I'm sorry, there were a couple of other questions which I'm not able to answer now because of time constraint. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy if you guys want to reach out and if I can share my view. I'm very sure in the session later, which Soumya is going to take, some questions can be answered there as well.
Yeah, definitely, Rajesh. Thank you so much for such an insightful session. And I believe that we were able to help a lot of people through this session. And you definitely did justice to the topic that we've decided on. Thank you so much for being on board for this webinar, Rajesh. Thanks a lot for sharing the insights.
No, thanks, guys. Thank you for making it interactive. Right, I really appreciate it. I'm normally apprehensive about giving Gyan sessions because I don't want to have a deafening silence in the end, right? Thankfully, that was not the case. So it was a good audience. Thank you very much, Mahima. Thank you, Soumya. I'm going to exit now and you guys can continue.
Thanks a lot, Rajesh. Good evening.